Now, Karen was a young girl who had an irresponsible father. I say that he was irresponsible because he was so self obsessed that he never gave a thought to the effect that he was having on the lives of his child and his wife. He was a very macho man. He liked to do the usual guy things. He loved hockey, he liked to hunt and fish, he liked to work on trucks. And he was disappointed when Karen came along. You see, he had wanted a boy. And here he was stuck with a girl. Now, most dads get over their loss of preference with the first glance at the baby. But not him. Not this man. When Karen was old enough to understand that her dad let her know that he only wanted a boy. Now, he never came right out and said it, but his actions spoke louder than words ever could. He never acknowledged her in front of others as his daughter. He referred to her impersonally as the girl who lives with us, meaning him and his wife. And as far as Karen could remember, he never shared any love with her. She felt dejected, like an outcast. But eventually, her father left the family and started a second one with a new wife. And rightly or wrongly, Karen blamed herself for that. Karen made her way through school as a loner. Having been rejected by the one man who should have loved her like no other man could, Karen refused to let anyone get close to her or hurt her again. Karen went to college and entered the workforce, becoming a successful businesswoman and entrepreneur. Her professional life was a great success, but that professional success did not help her fully get beyond the desire for her father to step up and go from being a father to being her dad. Now that she was a success, she was sure that he would love her. And if he didn't, she now felt that she had the gumption to ask him why, and to tell him just how much that he had hurt her over the years. Through the help of her grandmother on her father's side, Karen tracks down her father in another province. She calls him and tells him that she wants to meet. She asks him if he can come and see her. He says no. She says she understands. It's a fair trip. It's a fair trip at short notice. So she asks, "Can you meet me halfway?" Her father says, "I don't have time to meet you, not even halfway." And then, showing the same determination that allowed her to do so well in business, Karen refused to take no for an answer, gets into her car, and drives the full distance to meet him. After checking into a hotel, Karen phones her father. But even then, her father said that he didn't have enough time to meet her. And then, after a long pause, says, "I'll never have that time." Karen hangs up the phone and cries. Not the tears of a strong, independent, professional woman. She cries the tears of a 7-year-old. She feels hurt and abandoned and completely rejected again. She had been hanging on to the belief that he might come around, that if she confronted him with how much she had been hurt by him over the years, that maybe he'd see the light and change and become the father that she had always wanted. He did not, and he let her know that he never will. And now she was hurting worse than ever. Folks, today we are continuing on with a series about how to let the bitterness and the hurts that have been done to us by others go. In essence, how to forgive. In our lives, we'll be affected by the actions and the words of other people. The people who hurt you might be complete strangers, or they might be your closest friends. These are the hurts that are usually the deepest, and these are the hurts that can be the hardest to forgive. But regardless of whether you were hurt by a stranger who took your money and sense of security, or by a parent who didn't love you the way that, well, you deserve to be loved. God calls on us to forgive. God calls on us to forgive because God doesn't want this event to be a permanent stumbling block that we will never ever get over. Indeed, God wants us to heal from this, perhaps even heal the relationship where possible, and get on with living a great life. And indeed, life is the greatest gift that God can give. He wants you to have the benefit of that gift and to see it as a gift. Now, over the past several weeks, we've been talking about the steps that we can take to forgive those people that we've hurt us. In the first week of our series, we talked about, well, when we first get hurt, we have this overpowering feeling to get revenge. Eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. But then we took a look at that and we said, well, revenge, what is that really? We found that revenge is not an attempt to transcend suffering, but to extend it, to double it, if you will, if we are actually taking an eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. We said that forgiveness is the only way that we can break the cycle of violence before this kind of thing escalates. An eye for an eye escalates to a job for a job or a reputation for reputation. So then we start looking at the steps that we need to go through in order to forgive. The first step we said was to acknowledge the pain and anger that we feel as a result of somebody else's action, mourn it, and then grieve what we've lost. When we're hurt, we experience powerful emotions. We have to acknowledge it. We have to go through it. If we don't, we'll be like those people on the deck of the Titanic, trying to have a wonderful time while all around us there's misery and death and a sinking feeling going on all around us. We have to acknowledge these things. Acknowledge it, feel it, be aware of it, so that we can take action against it. The next week was, once we've acknowledged it, now that we have these feelings, let's start trying to push them out of ourselves. So the next thing to do was bring your hurts to God to be filled by His Holy Spirit. We said one of the things that we can do there is, well, talk to God. Through prayer, tell God everything that's happened. God knows. God won't be offended. Well, God won't be shocked. But God will be there to listen. Then we said, well, listen to what God has to say. And that's where looking at the Bible really comes into play. Where you'll see words like, your mother and father may forget you, but I never will. Things like, I've knitted you together in the womb. I knew all your days before you were born. That's perhaps something that Karen could have used. Or you'll see things like, come to me all who are weary and heavy laden. And you'll find rest for your soul. Find rest for your soul. And you'll see things like, I'm your shepherd. I'll lead you beside still waters and green pastures. I'll restore your soul. And when you're in with the midst of your enemy, I'll be there. And your cup will overflow. These are the things that God needs for you to hear. You'll hear words like, you are my masterpiece. Imagine that you are God's masterpiece. You are God's creation. You are what God has put His love into. You need to hear that. When your soul has been battered and beaten, when everybody else has turned away or turned against you, it's a powerful thing to know that the God of the universe, who created all of this, has created you. And He finds you to be good. And He finds you to be beautiful. And He would rather go to the cross for you than go to heaven without you. And then talk to God again. Through prayer, thank God for all the good things that you have in your life. Instead of focusing on the thing that you have lost, look at all the beautiful things that you have. If you have lost a treasure, that should make all the treasures that you still have that much more precious and valuable. Look at those and thank God for them. Last time we gathered together, we said, the last thing we need to do is choose happiness over righteousness and learn to let it go. Quite often in life, we have a choice. We can be right, or we can be happy. Yes, you can be right, and you can say, that no good son of a gun did this, that, and the other thing for me, and you can stew all your days and be grumbly. Meanwhile, the guy who did this, that, and the other thing is off having the life of Riley, having a great old time, not knowing that you're there stewing. You can be right or you can be happy. Choose happiness over righteousness and learn to let it go. When a real life event has happened to you, anyone would say that it's terribly wrong, and those are the ones that are hardest to let go. You might be totally justified feeling the way that you do. But do you want to carry that with you for the rest of your life? Do you want that one event or that one person to define your life? And we talked about different things that you can do to let it go. We said, make a deliberate decision to stop discussing the story with others. Now, don't say, well, I'm going to my therapist, so does that mean I can't talk to my therapist? No. But don't keep rehashing the same story over and over and over again. You're breathing life into a dead corpse just to keep it with you. We said, be pleasantly congenial when you're in the company of those that you choose to forgive. And again, I said, that doesn't mean you have to have your ex-husband over for Thanksgiving. He was a turkey before. You don't need to have him over here now. But if you're sharing custody, or if you live in a small town, you're going to run into him and his new honey every once in a while. Don't let that to be a big thing. Let it go. As my grandmother always said, wish him the second best. After all, you're the best. He can have the second best. Avoid putting anyone through a guilt trip. Guilt trips are just using our status as a victim to take it to our advantage. Okay, you make that person feel bad. But you make that person feel bad because you're allowing them to see you as a victim. And finally, when a person is remorseful, do whatever you can to restore a sense of dignity. If they've done something wrong and you let them know and they're sorry, don't twist the knife in a little bit further. What more do you want from them? Let them go and try to be the person that they needed to be, perhaps the first time, but that they're trying to aspire to be now. And that brings us to today. When someone has done or said something that has hurt us or offended us, we're hurt, and our relationship with that other person has been hurt as well. Everything that we've talked about are things that we can do to build ourselves up, to heal ourselves from the hurt that has happened. But we haven't talked about the healing of the relationship. That's the next thing. And the title of our sermon is today, Determined If You Want to Repair That Relationship, and if so, be candid about the problem. And that's what Jesus talked about in the Bible passage for today. Very short, but very powerful. He says, if you're standing before the altar in the temple, offering a sacrifice to God, and suddenly you remember that someone has something against you, leave the sacrifice there beside the altar. Go and be reconciled to that person. And then come back and give your sacrifice to God. So if you're here and you think, geez, this person has something against me, the collection plate is clumping. Just leave the collection plate, run out the door, go and say, look, we got to make amends, and when they do, come back and put your money in the collection plate. That's basically what he's saying. What Jesus is saying is not just the love of God thing that you need to do. As a matter of fact, if you go to church and all of a sudden you remember that you're broken with somebody else, you need to leave the church and go take care of it. He says that's job one. Indeed, this is really the foundational and fundamental core of the entire Bible. We have a right relationship with God when we ask for forgiveness and enter into a relationship with Him. And we can have a right relationship with others when we offer forgiveness to them. We were made for relationships with God and with other people. Our relationship with other people provide us with love and affection, a sense of security, relationship, entertainment, an opportunity to learn and grow. Our relationships can provide us with some of the greatest joys of life. But because your trust in them and the fact that they know you in ways that nobody else does, your family or friends can hurt you in a way that no stranger ever could. What Jesus is telling us to do here is that if our relationship with somebody has been broken or damaged by something that we said or done, it's extremely important to go and confront that person and that problem so that the relationship can be healed. It's important to do this because, number one, if this relationship added to the quality of your life, then it would be a tragedy to let it die. Marriages, friendships, family bonds. These are all special and precious relationships that can bring great joy and significance to a person's life. True friends, they don't grow on trees. And the love between a man and a woman is akin to being holy. These relationships should not be discarded without doing everything possible to save them. They are just too valuable to let die. Number two, we teach people how to treat us. You either teach people how to treat you with dignity and respect, or you don't. You shape others' behavior when you teach them what they can get away with and what they cannot. When the action done or the words said hurt us so much, were done by accident or on purpose, the best way to make sure that they don't happen again is to tell that person that they hurt you, how it made you feel, that you would like it stopped. Problems just don't go away. Running from them or pretending that they don't exist or being afraid to talk about them will not make them go away, and it won't fix them. If you have a leaky pipe, you can pretend it's not leaking, but after a while, next thing you know, the roof is falling down, or you're going to get some butter in the fridge downstairs and you have to wear galoshes. You can run away from it, but eventually you're going to have to come home. You can pretend it doesn't exist, but after a while, you'll find out that it does. And the damage that it has done will be very costly indeed. And number three, it helps you to stop feeling like a victim. A victim is passive and weak. By confronting the person who hurt you and being candid about the problem, you're now taking action to address the situation and perhaps repair a strained or broken relationship. So how do we do this? How do we determine if you want to repair the relationship and be candid about the problem? Well, the first thing to do is look at the nature of your relationship with that other person. If the person that hurt you was a stranger, then there's no real relationship to heal. If you're driving by and someone gives you the finger, don't drive around town all day looking for that person saying, listen, our relationship is broken because you gave me the finger. We need to talk about this. No, that's not going to happen. You're probably never going to see them again. You just stew about it for a little while and it'll go away. If there's no relationship there to heal, well, perhaps you don't need to do anything. If the nature of your relationship was unhealthy to begin with, the person was manipulative or abusive, then it's not appropriate to try to repair or heal that relationship. If you're in an abusive relationship where the person was always lying or manipulating you, don't try to repair that. You're just going to get yourself into a world of hurt. In these kind of cases, confronting that person may give them one more chance to lure you in or to hurt you again. If you feel the need to confront these people for what they've done to you, Perhaps writing them a letter that you never send would be the best way of handling it. You get it out, but you don't invite a conversation again. However, if this was once a good relationship that once brought joy to your soul and happiness to your life, or if it's necessary to coexist as a neighbor or co-worker or as divorced parents of children, you should sit down with them and talk through the problem. Any relationship worth its salt is built on honesty. But there's a way of being honest that will build a friendship, and then there's a way of being honest that will damage a relationship. When you're confronting anyone, be it a friend or a spouse or a family member or a co-worker about something, well, you have to speak the truth. But you have to speak the truth in love. Here's some ways that you can do that. Number one, compliment in public, but correct in private. Nobody wants to be embarrassed in front of people, and you will not be able to have an open conversation about deep, meaningful things when other people are around. If you try to talk to someone about how they've hurt you in public, they will withdraw or try to defend their position. If something needs to be said, say it in private, where the need to save face is not present and the ability to be open is there. If you're sitting around the Thanksgiving table and you look over at Cousin Lou and you say, Lou, your body odor is offensive. I wish you'd wash a bit more. All you're going to get from Lou is bad things in return. But if you go to him afterwards or beforehand and you try to have a conversation where this is not going to be, where he doesn't have to defend himself, well, then you can. Compliment in public, correct in private. Number two, correct when they're up, not when they're down. Nobody can handle correction when they're tired or fatigued or depressed or out of energy. When I'm feeling good, I can handle almost anything. When I'm feeling tired, I can't handle anything. Isn't that true with you? When you're tired or fatigued, the slightest word of correction, it's like a big mountain, overwhelming. Timing is everything when you're trying to be candid. If things are down, if they look like they have a terrible day, they come in and they're like this, oh, geez, I can't wait just to go to bed. Don't start having, I think we need to talk. That's a sure sign that your conversation will not be effective. And then number three, talk about what hurt you and how it made you feel. When you confront a person about what they said or did that hurt you so much, don't attack a person's character or resort to name calling. Instead, talk about the behavior that hurt you so much and how it made you feel. If a husband is repeatedly late for dinner and seems totally indifferent about punctuality, he permits little things to delay him. When he arrives late for the fourth or fifth day in a row, his wife says in an accusing tone, "You're late again. Look at this supper. It's cold. I worked my fingers to the bone and you don't care. I went to a lot of hard work and you spoiled it." Well, that's attacking. It's natural, but the natural response to an attack is either to run away and hide or to attack back. So his response is to justify his lateness to the attack and attack her for not being understanding, for placing far too much importance on the dinner that just created an adversarial relationship. These two people who are supposed to love each other are now acting like enemies. I'm late because I stopped in at your cousin Joe and she was talking about this, that, and the other thing, and I wanted to stay because you said that I should spend more time with our family. Attacking back. Here's an alternative. At the right time, the wife can say something like this: when I prepare a nice supper and it's left to get cold, I don't feel like I'm appreciated. I know you might have good reasons for being late, but my work is important too. It seems like nobody notices. Notice she doesn't make any accusatory statements. like you did this or did that. It's all I statements. I feel this way. This is how I feel hurt. Instead of feeling attacked, the husband now has an opportunity to see how his actions make his wife feel, and now they both can work on fixing the problem instead of fixing the blame at one another. If you lovingly confront someone who hurt you, in many cases the person will admit and ask for forgiveness. On the other hand, the person may deny any wrongdoing and being insulted by the accusation. If you know that your information is correct and you present the evidence to the offender, he may be forced to admit that he has been wrong, but they may be unwilling to change their behavior. And if that is the case, let me be perfectly clear. No long-term positive relationship can exist without confession, a changed behavior, and forgiveness. Failure to apologize and change the offending behavior will ensure that the offense will remain a barrier between you and the other person. If the person who has offended you fails to apologize and change their behavior, then your relationship is changed. It'll never be healed. It'll be changed forever. Maybe it means that you won't be as close as you once were. Instead of being close friends, maybe you'll just be friendly acquaintances. You may still be husband and wife, but things won't be as they once were. Or it might mean the ending of the relationship altogether. In this case, you forgive and then you walk away. You walk away from the relationship, but you don't walk away, but you walk away from all the hurt and anger as well. This doesn't need a reconciliation, but it does free us emotionally and spiritually to become the person that we were meant to be. This is what Karen needed to do at the beginning of our story. Her father wouldn't even meet her, and it was painfully obvious that he will never change his behavior. Keeping her hopes alive of ever having a meaningful relationship with him would just mean hurt and pain heaped upon more hurt and pain. Always remember that in any conflict, we have the option of walking away. Not out of weakness, not out of fear, but out of strength. Deciding that the emotional price that we have to pay to remain in this relationship is just too high. My friends, we live in a disposable world. We live in a world where it's easier to throw away things than try to fix them. But the relationship you have with your friends and family are just too valuable to walk away from. So yes, they will hurt you. Yes, they will do things that will embarrass you. Yes, they will cause sadness and grief. But that is the price that we pay for living in a world full of imperfect people, of which we are one. But when they do, don't just cast them aside. Don't be afraid to be honest about your hurts or problems. Running from them, pretending that they don't exist, or being afraid to talk about them will not make them go away. This can be tough stuff. It can be awkward or painful and emotionally stressful. But please be willing to do this. Either way, you'll be paying. You will pay in anger, conflict, hurt, loss of a relationship, or one that is very unsatisfying. If you want to restore a broken relationship, please be willing to speak the truth, but speak the truth in love. To which I can only say, thanks be to God, and amen. Let's just bow our minds and hearts just for a quick moment of prayer. Loving God, as we gather in the midst, gather with one another, we gather together as people who are in relationship with one another and with others. These bonds can be very strong. And because they are strong, when they are broken, they hurt all the more. And Lord, for some of us, it's not easy to be confrontational. It's not easy to say, you hurt me. It's embarrassing. It's awkward. We don't want to cause a fuss. And yet, oh Lord, if we don't, we invite that offense to happen again, or somehow we start building resentment between us. And Lord, there's always a price to pay when there's a hurt. And we can pay that price in breaking the relationship off, or we can pay a price by trying to build it up again. Lord, if these were positive, good relationships in our lives, allow us to try to do that. You said to love you with all your mind, heart, strength, and soul, but to love our neighbor as ourselves. Even as we seek to love you, O Lord, you ask us to look not just up, but to our side. See the people who stand with us and to love them and to push those things that stop that love from going back and forth, to push it to the side so that our relationship can be strong and good again. And, oh Lord, as we gather in this place of worship today, we're going to go through a week, oh Lord, of remembrance of when there was great conflict and when there was great hurt. And as a nation, we have gone through it many times, too many times. But now that we have gone through the big ones, we realize what is truly important. That those men and women who lost sons and daughters, it turns things into a different perspective. There are things that were left unsaid, hugs and kisses that were never made, milestones in lives that were never reached. As we look upon those relationships and the things that were and remember, allow us to take a look at our lives here today so that we don't lose track of what is truly important, because we don't know what life has to come. So allow us never to let the sun go down without remembering those people who are important to us, those who have passed, and those who are still there. Allow us to make those important relationships important in our lives, O Lord. And as we seek to remember those who have fallen, allow us to be thankful for the reason that they did, and let us be thankful for those who are still with us. We pray this in your name, O Lord. These are the prayers of the people. O Lord, hear our prayers. Amen.